All right, sweet. Okay, so we have in our storyboard our new table, our new view controller. Now we need to make a new view controller in the Swift world. So I'm just going to go over here and go new file. It's a Cocoa Touch file. It's a new view controller. I'm going to give it a name. So I'll call this like task detail view controller. Wants to know where I'm saving it to, the project. Great. Create. It'll pop up over here. Awesome. We have it. And so now I can do all the stuff that I'm able to do with a normal view controller. So I'm going to split screen it. Wire it up. Oh wait, first I got to tell it this is that view controller. Sorry. So go to the ID thing and say this is the task detail view controller. And now I can do that. By the way, see how I couldn't drag the little blue line over before I set the class? You would have that same problem if you hadn't done that with the custom cell. Okay, so that's the task title. This would be the class, the task priority. And this would be the complete task button. So that's going to be an action. Okay, now, believe it or not, to finish this whole thing, we're just going to do all the stuff that we've already done before. There's nothing new here. So to make this work, what I'm going to do is go back to my big old list, create a hole for the segue, pass through the segue which item that they had tapped on. Same thing you did for the Pokédex project. You just select, okay, the 0th one, the first one, the second one, the third one, etc. And then, in this page, I'm going to do the same thing I did on Tuesday, which is load all the stuff out of storage again, and then pull out the specific thing that they had tapped on out of storage to populate the task and the priority. And then, for the complete task button, that's where I'm going to go and do the exact same thing. I'm going to take the big old list of all the tasks, go in and change its status from 1 to 0, and then save all that stuff back into storage. When the user hits back, it'll refresh the giant table, only now we're going to add some new code that will do something special when their task is at 0, okay? By changing, or when their task is set to 0, by changing the status between 0 and 1, what we're doing is keeping the task around. So if the user accidentally, you rarely want to actually delete user work. So with when the user says, I'm done with that, you might want to ultimately build an archive tab where the user can see all the tasks that they had finished, right? Or you might want to, it's satisfying to look at a giant task list and see all these things lined out. And so you might want to start keeping track of the date stamp that the task was complete, and maybe on the day that it was complete, you show it lined out, and then once they've moved out of the today, it clears that out so they see a fresh list with not a bunch of lines, but it's kind of like satisfying. Does that make sense? It's useful to not just go up and kill a bunch of tasks. With me? Cool? Okay. So we'll go ahead and kind of do all that. Honestly, there's nothing that I just said is new. I'm literally going to go steal a bunch of code from myself to do everything. So the first thing is we need to go ahead and figure out which thing they tapped on in the table list. So I'm going to pull up my Pokemon code over here on this screen. And I'm going to steal it for the segue code. And I'm going to paste it into the table, the task list. So the big table is where that's going to go live. After view did load, after view will appear. I'll put in my segue code. And as promised, it literally is the same code as Pokemon. You can see because I have go to individual Pokemon as the identifier. Okay? So that means I need to make a new identifier for my segue, which I haven't done yet. So I'll switch back to my storyboard. And I'll say, hey, this one right here needs to get a custom name. I see you, give me a second. So it needs to have identifier. I don't want to call it like go to Pokemon. I want to say go to task detail. I go back to this and I give this that same thing. So go to task. What's this right here? Where's this code coming from? Or where am I putting it? I'm putting it in the task list view controller. So just at the end, right? So here's all the stuff about the table that I got up on screen right now.
So it's after the self.
And then after the view did load, and after view will appear, and after all that stuff, I'm just saying prepare for segue. You can put it anywhere, but to me, a segue is the last thing that happens to a view controller. So it makes sense to me to put it at the end of the view controller code.
So it's in the override.
I still got some error messages, but we'll get to that. All right, and so the destination can't be individual Pokemon view controller because that doesn't exist. It's task detail view controller. And in destination, there isn't anything called Pokemon index, so we'll come back to that. In this current view controller, there isn't anything called Pokemon table, and there isn't anything called Pokemons. So I'm going to get rid of Pokemons, which I think is not correct Pokemon syntax, but that's all right. So now we just have line 68 right here, which is the destination stuff. And if you remember how this works, destination is like where the segue is going. And so it's saying, hey, go into the destination and change Pokemon index. There is no thing called Pokemon index. So we'll just go here and say that that's like the task index. That still doesn't exist yet, but we'll fix that in a second. See, it gives me an error message saying, hey, that doesn't exist. No worries. And then also Pokemon table does not exist for the indexed path for selected row. The name of my table is task list table view, so I'll select that. Scroll down, change its name to that, and now that should work, except for task index. I'm not sure if this is smart enough to catch that or not. It is. And so when you read it, you can say, hey, there's no thing called task index inside of task detail view. No problem. We'll go ahead and set that up really quick. So I go to task detail view. So this is, just to remember where we're at in the flow. We're looking at the Swift code that controls this page here, the detail view. So task detail view just needs to have not just these titles and buttons and all this kind of stuff, but also needs to have a variable called task index. And we'll set it to 0 as default. Okay, so now it should work. What's that?
Can you go over like the past like 2 minutes?
Sure. I also got a recording that's currently 321.6 megabytes. But let me walk you through it again. It's the same stuff that we did for the Pokemon. Like literally I copied and pasted the code. So it's the same thing. So you have a big old table, and you need to know which one of the things that somebody had selected from that table. That's called the selected path for index row. Is the thing that they had tapped on. Okay, knowing that is great, but it's useless because you don't need to know that on the table list. You need to know that on the next page off of the table list. So you need to pass that selected path for index row number, the thing that they had tapped on, you need to pass that on to the next view controller. Okay? So in order to pass something on to the next view controller, that's got to go through a segue. So what we did here is we created a segue. It's the same thing that we, literally the same code that we had done for the Pokemon thing, which is, hey, I'm preparing for a segue. And the specific segue is the one that I've called go to task detail. I have that name because that's what I typed into the storyboard when I select the segue, and then I can change its identifier. And the reason we have that is because in theory you could have multiple segues off of one view controller. So you need to be able to have different things happen depending on which one you're leaving, or which segue you're going through. And I'm saying, hey, I have a segue that's called go to task detail. To me, just a useful metaphor, maybe there's a handhold that was useful from earlier. A segue is like a tunnel through a cave or through a mountainside or whatever. And so I'm saying it's this cave, this thing that's passing from one side to another, this segue, the specific one called go to task detail. And then I'm saying, hey, I know that where this segue is going, where this tunnel is pointing, I know it's going to task detail view controller. And what I want to do is reach through the segue, which is what line 68 does. Reach through the segue into the destination, so into the other side of the tunnel. Reach through and change something in the other side. And the thing that I want to change is a variable that I've created called task index. And I want to take that variable and set it to whatever the user had tapped on in the table view. And remember, tables count just like computers count, which they start counting at 0 and then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is just passing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, through the segue. It's not passing the task. It's not passing the name of the task. It's not passing the priority of the task. It's not passing anything. This code doesn't care what you're doing. The only thing it's doing is it knows which one of the row of the tables that you tapped on, and which row in the table that you tapped on, and it's just passing that. So think about it super generically. Get it out of task and out of status and all that kind of stuff, and just think of it as this generic thing I'm drawing here. Where here's a table, and this first one is called 0, and the next one is called 1, and the next one is called 2, and the next one is called 3, and the next one is called 4. That's the selected path for index row. That's what, or index path for selected row. That's what this is right here. Line 68. And if I tap on the 0 one, it's going to push through the segue 0 into the next view controller. Its Swift code has a little thing that's a variable, and I'm setting it to 0. If you tapped on 4, it wouldn't put in 0, it would put in 4. Make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Doesn't like something I'm doing. What doesn't it like? Task detail view controller has no member task index. Task detail view controller, task index. Yes, it does. Let's save it. Maybe it just needs a good save. Yeah, cool. It's just, that's an invalid error message. Okay, so now this is working. It doesn't look like it's working, but trust me, it is. Okay, behind the scenes, that number is getting changed. And to test it, I'm just going to go to Task Detail View Controller and add to the view did load. I'm just going to print out whatever task index is. And so when I tap on each one of these things, down in the log at the bottom should appear which one they tapped on. So you can see now it says 1. When I click on the second one, it says 0 when I tap on the first one. And it says whatever this is when I tap on that one. Sweet. So my task index stuff is working. Let's wire it all up. So when view did load happens, what I want to do is change the title. So we'll change task title. And specifically, we'll change it to whatever the task index is, just for now.
Mine is still giving you a bunch of error messages.
What's that?
Mine is still giving you a bunch of error messages.
You hunt them down for me?
It says, what was your expressions unused to do
So for instance here, line 23, what this is going to do is just, instead of writing to the console 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, it's just going to replace the label with that, just to make sure that all of our wiring up is right. So now it says 0 right there. This one says 3. Sweet. 1, 2. Awesome. Now remember, every view controller is its own individual existence. So that giant table of stuff that I had in the previous view controller no longer exists in this default view controller. Now I could, in theory, pass not just the index number that you had tapped on, but also the value of that task, so what that task's name was, to the next view controller. But that's not terribly useful, because I'm actually going to be making changes in the detail view to the user storage. So what I'm going to do is, in this one, just recreate all that same stuff, where I load all the tasks and save all the tasks and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to set that all up right here. And to do that, like we've been talking for a while, it is like Taco Bell. It is just the same stuff over and over and over and over again. So I'm just going to use this right here to load up all my tasks. Put it in the view to load again. That loads up all the tasks, and it saves it into an array called all tasks. I'm getting an error message because in this view controller, there is nothing called all tasks. So I need to do the same thing that I've done before, which is create an array called all tasks. And that error message should go away once I do that. Oh, and I have to define what a task is again. That should work. And then down here, instead of saying, hey, I want just a number, from now on, I want to actually show the user what the task is out of the array that they had in storage. So I'm just going to say, instead of saying 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., I want to just look up in all tasks, select the number that they had tapped on, and show me its title or task name. And while I'm at it, might as well also change that task priority text right here. So that's line 2024. I'm going to call task priority and change its text to whatever the task was as well. And now I hit go. Oh, priority is an int, so I gotta cast it into a string to make it work. Oh, whoopsie. Hit go. And so now I can hit brush teeth, and it shows me brush teeth. Awesome, and shows me the right priority. Go to sleep, go to sleep. Get dressed, get dressed.
Can you go back to the code on the details?
Yeah, so this is the task detail right here.
Yeah.
And so what I just kind of breezed through really quick there was first I just recreate my task struct because that didn't exist in this current default view controller. It doesn't know what a task is. So I got to tell it what it is again. That's line 15 through 19. There is a way to share these structs things across multiple view controllers, the definition of them, but we're not going to get into that right now. It's way easier just to drop the code in over and over again.
Wait, which page is this
What's that? I'm looking at task detail view controller.
on? Are we not using task index as your
So I'm looking just from a high level. If you're a visual learner like me, I'm worried about this one. So that's task detailed view controller.
Oh yeah, okay. I
Cool.
just didn't see the top part.
Sweet. So I'm just reminding the computer what a task is. I'm creating an empty bucket that will hold all my tasks. And right now it's saying default, but in like a second I'm going to wipe that out. That's no longer going to exist anymore. Just a moment. And then down here in the view did load, I'm just reusing the same code as before that lets me pull all the stuff out of user defaults. So load all the user default stuff out and then populate all tasks with it. So that's line 32. And then line 35 and 36 is just pretty standard issue stuff that we've done before, which is I'm taking the giant array of all tasks. I'm going to the specific one that I care about, which is the task index, which was set by the previous page. That's what thing I tapped on in the table. And I'm getting specifically out of all the tasks, I'm getting that one task, and out of that one task, I'm getting its name. And then the next line, out of that one task, I'm getting its priority. And I'm setting those to be visible to the user through the labels. Yeah.
My console, so you were getting like different numbers.
Yeah.
Based on like where they were placed. Like I'm getting zeros.
Make sure you're in your the previous one, which is the task list view controller, which is the list of tasks. Make sure you're your segue is all set up right.
Oh,
It
the
might.
identifier?
Yeah.
I think that's probably
Yep.
why.
Yep.
Okay. And how do you get that?
Again, to change the segue identifier, which is line 65 right here.
Yeah.
In the storyboard, you have to select the segue, which you can't really tell on this screen, but this did just get a little blue outline on
Yeah.
it. And then in the little dial-y, the little slidery icon,
Okay.
you can give it a name. And just make sure whatever name you get it is the same name that you use in the Swift file. Okay, so we're moving right along. We're making some good progress. Let's make sure it works how we want it to work. So I can select an individual thing and get the information up. Awesome. And so now what I'm going to do is in the,
Is there a problem with my alt as errors? It says continuous.
can you help him? All right, I'm going to stop this recording because this is a great stopping point, and then we'll get to Act 3, which is how do you actually make it do anything.